You need to understand something that will save you from making the same mistake twice. Because when an avoidant looks like they miss you, when they look like they are shaken, when they look like they are sad, it is easy to tell yourself, see, I mattered, they finally realize what they lost. And you did matter, you still do. But the deeper truth, the truth that gives you your power back, is that many avoidants are not only sad because they lost you, they are sad because they lost access to you. Access to your attention, your softness, your emotional labor, your forgiveness, your constant availability, your willingness to keep the connection alive even when they were pulling away. For a long time, you didn't realize you were giving someone a kind of privilege that they never fully earned. You gave them the comfort of knowing you would respond. You gave them the safety of knowing you would explain yourself again and again. You gave them the luxury of being inconsistent while still feeling secure that you would not truly leave. You gave them access to your heart without requiring the one thing that turns access into love, responsibility. And because you are a good person, because you love deeply, because you try to see the best in people, you translated their distance into something softer. You called it stress. You called it being busy. You called it fear. You called it they're just not good at feelings. But what you were doing, without realizing, was making it easier for them to stay exactly the same while you did the emotional work for two. You need to understand there's a difference between love and access. Love is consistent effort. Love is care that shows up when it's inconvenient. Love is communication that doesn't vanish the moment things get real. Love is accountability, repair, and the courage to meet someone where they are. Access is different. Access is the ability to come and go and still receive your warmth. Access is the ability to pull away and still be welcomed back without real change. Access is the ability to touch your life without holding your heart. And for some avoidants, access is what feels safest, because access gives them connection without the vulnerability of commitment. That is why losing access stings in a way they don't expect. Because for a long time, your presence was not only love, it was a system. It was a system that allowed them to regulate their nervous system without building emotional maturity. When they felt overwhelmed, they could retreat. When they felt lonely, they could return. When they felt guilty, they could offer a small message, a half apology, a little charm, and the door would open again. They were not always doing this to be cruel. Sometimes it is simply what they learned. Closeness feels like pressure. Distance feels like relief, and they move in and out of relationships the way someone moves in and out of a room they can't fully breathe in. But the system still worked in their favor because you kept it working. And you need to understand what you removed when you finally stepped back. You didn't just remove your texts, you removed your emotional labor, the way you used to carry the conversation, the way you used to fill the silence, the way you used to soften every truth so they wouldn't shut down. You removed your forgiveness on demand, the way you used to accept confusion because you hoped clarity would come later. You removed your constant availability, the way you used to be reachable, even when you were hurt, even when you were tired, even when you were trying to protect your dignity. You removed the safety net, and when the safety net disappears, the person who kept jumping away suddenly realizes the ground is real. That is where the sadness comes from. They may not even label it correctly. They may tell themselves they miss you, but what they often miss first is the access to how you made them feel. The comfort of being cared about without having to be fully present. The relief of knowing there was someone who would still hold the emotional thread even when they dropped it. The quiet confidence that you would stay connected even when they went cold. And when you cut that off, cleanly, calmly, without begging, it interrupts something inside them. It makes them face a truth they avoided, that you were not a permanent resource, you were a person. This is why you will sometimes see them return in a strange way, not with a heartfelt speech, not with clear accountability, but with a small reach, a hey, a random check-in, a like on your story, a message that pretends nothing happened. Because they are not always reaching for love, they are reaching for access. They are reaching to see if the door is still unlocked. They are reaching to see if your boundary is real. They are reaching to see if the old version of you is still waiting behind the curtain, ready to explain, ready to forgive, ready to restart without repair. And if you respond the old way, you teach them the old rule again, I can disappear and still keep you. You need to understand, your job is not to punish them. Your job is to protect you. Because when you confuse their sadness for growth, you put your heart back in the same place it got hurt. When you accept their attention as proof of transformation, you reopen a door that they still haven't learned to walk through with consistency. And you deserve more than a cycle that only gives you love when it is losing you. You deserve a love that chooses you while it has you, not only when it fears you are gone. So let them be sad if they are sad. Let them feel the absence they created. Let them sit in the quiet that they used to use as control. But you stay grounded. You stay clear. You stay honest with yourself about what was real. Because your heart is not a place people visit when they feel lonely. Your heart is not a convenience store for someone's comfort. Your heart is a home, and homes require responsibility. And the moment you finally treated access to you like something earned, not something freely handed out, you didn't become harsh. You became whole. Ladies and gentlemen, you need to understand something that almost nobody explains to you in the moment your heart is breaking. Because when you cut an avoidant off, when you stop chasing, when you stop filling the silence, it can look like nothing is happening. It can look like they are fine. It can look like they moved on. And if you are the one who loves deeply, if you are the one who fought for clarity, that can feel insulting, like you meant nothing. But the truth is, avoidant pain often arrives in a different order. They feel shock first, then relief, and only later does the sadness show up, because grief begins the moment control disappears. At first, the shock hits them because the pattern has broken. They were used to a certain rhythm, they pull away, you come closer. They go quiet, you speak for both of you. They disappear, you explain, you forgive, you reopen the door. That rhythm made life predictable for them. It allowed them to keep closeness at a distance, to receive your love without having to sit in the vulnerability of real intimacy. So when you cut them off cleanly, when you don't argue, when you don't beg, when you don't send paragraphs trying to be understood, they feel it like a sudden silence in a room that was always noisy. Something in them thinks, wait, where did you go? Why aren't you doing what you always do? And that shock is not romance yet, it's disruption. It's the moment the familiar system stops working. Then comes the relief, and this is the part you need to understand, because if you don't understand it, you will misread it, and you will suffer more than you have to. Avoidants often experience closeness as pressure. Even when they care, even when they feel love, intimacy can trigger their nervous system. It can feel like expectation. It can feel like responsibility. It can feel like losing freedom. So when you step back, they may feel a wave of calm. Not because you didn't matter, but because the pressure has dropped. They can breathe, they can tell themselves they're okay, they can distract themselves with work, friends, routine, they can act normal. And you on the other side are thinking, how can they be fine while I can barely hold myself together? But you need to understand that relief is not proof of emotional health. It is often proof of emotional avoidance. It is the body choosing numbness over vulnerability. It is their system doing what it has always done: shut down, detach, move away from intensity. But here is the part that changes everything. The sadness arrives later, because sadness requires space to be felt. It requires the mind to stop defending itself. It requires the illusion of control to fade. And control is what many avoidants use to feel safe. Control of the distance, control of the pace, control of how close someone gets and how much they have to reveal. When you are still chasing, when you are still explaining, they still feel control, because your pursuit means the door is open. Your pursuit means you are still accessible. Your pursuit means the connection is still available in the background, even if they are not showing up fully. And as long as that control exists, the deeper feelings can stay buried. Then life gets quiet. A weekend night, a random memory, a place they pass, a song that reminds them of you. They reach for their phone out of habit, not even a big dramatic decision, just a reflex. And suddenly they feel it, the absence, the real absence. Not the playful distance, not the pause that ends with you coming back, but the kind of absence that has edges. The kind of absence that says this time they meant it. And that is when the sadness shows up, because now the system has changed. They can't return to the old comfort. They can't step back and still keep you attached. They can't retreat and expect you to be there waiting with open arms and an open heart. You need to understand, avoidants don't always grieve the relationship first. They grieve the lost control of access. They grieve the lost safety net. They grieve the fact that your love was not infinite. They grieve the fact that their distance had consequences, and this grief can look strange. It can look like checking your social media. It can look like rereading old messages. It can look like a sudden curiosity about what you're doing. It can look like them reaching out with something small, something light, something that doesn't risk vulnerability because they are still afraid of emotional exposure. They may not say, "I'm sorry for the ways I hurt you." They may say, "Hey, how are you?" And you, because you have a heart, because you still care, might feel your whole body soften. You might feel hope rise again. You might think, this is it, they finally miss me. And this is where you must be careful. You need to understand the difference between regret and panic. Regret comes with accountability. Regret comes with changed behavior. Regret comes with real effort, not just a message, but consistency, clarity, repair. Panic comes with testing. Panic comes with a sudden reach for access because they feel the loss and they want to know if they still can. Panic says, let me see if you're still there. Panic says, let me see if your boundary is real. Panic says, let me bring you back into the old pattern so I don't have to sit with discomfort. Your power is not in proving you mattered. Your power is in staying grounded while they feel whatever they feel. Because if they are truly sad in a way that leads to growth, you will see it in what they do next, not in what they say in one emotional moment. You will see consistency. You will see effort that does not disappear when things get real. You will see communication that does not run from discomfort. You will see a willingness to meet you, not just when they fear losing you, but when they actually want to build with you. So let them feel the shock. Let them feel the relief. Let them feel the delayed sadness. But you do not hand them your heart just because they finally felt something. You need to understand their feelings are not your responsibility, and their sadness is not your proof. Your proof is your peace. Your proof is your self-respect. Your proof is the fact that you stopped bleeding in private just to keep someone comfortable in distance. And if they come back, you don't ask for pretty words, you ask for a different pattern. You ask for a different standard. You ask for love that is brave enough to stay. You need to understand something because the moment you cut them off, the moment you stop reaching, the moment you stop offering your heart like it's always available, something almost predictable happens. They don't usually come back with a grand confession. They come back with small tests. And if you don't see those tests for what they are, you can mistake a knock at the door for a changed person, and you will reopen your life to the same pattern that broke you the first time. It starts quietly because an avoidant rarely returns in a way that requires them to be fully vulnerable. They return in a way that gives them an exit, a casual message, a hey, a meme, a how have you been, a like on your story, a random reaction to something you post, something light enough that if you respond coldly, they can pretend they meant nothing by it. It is a check, not always a commitment. It is a thermometer, not always a love letter. They are measuring the temperature of access. They are checking if the door is still unlocked. They are checking if the version of you that always forgives is still there. And you need to understand why this happens, not to demonize them, but to protect your heart. For an avoidant, emotional intensity can feel like pressure, and pressure triggers retreat. They prefer low-risk connection, because low-risk connection lets them feel close without feeling exposed. So when they come back, they often do it in a way that avoids accountability. They don't say, "I'm sorry I left you confused." They don't say, "I understand how my silence hurt you." They don't say, "I want to do this differently." They say, "Hey, stranger." They send a smiley face. They act like time didn't pass. Because if they keep it casual, they don't have to face the damage. And if you respond, they get the comfort of knowing they still have a place in your world. This is what makes it so dangerous for you, because after being ignored, attention feels like love. After being starved, crumbs feel like a meal. After being left in uncertainty, one clear message can feel like a miracle. You can feel your body react before your mind catches up, the heart rush, the hope, the fantasy that this time they finally realized. And in that moment, you are not just responding to them, you are responding to the version of the story you wanted, the version where the person who hurt you finally becomes the person you needed. But you need to understand, a test is not transformation, and attention is not repair. A true return has weight. A true return comes with ownership, with clarity, with consistency, with behavior that doesn't collapse the moment emotions rise. A test has no weight. A test floats. A test is easy to send and easy to deny. A test is designed to give them the comfort of access without the cost of vulnerability. And sometimes they don't even realize they are doing it because it's a pattern, a nervous system habit, a way to regulate discomfort by reestablishing connection without deep engagement. But whether it's conscious or not, the effect on you is the same if you let it pull you back in. You need to understand, the avoidant often doesn't miss the relationship first. They miss the access. They miss the way you made them feel safe without requiring them to grow. They miss your patience. They miss your softness. They miss your willingness to explain. They miss the way you stayed emotionally available even when they were emotionally absent. They miss the benefit of you, not always the responsibility of you. And when they lose that access, they feel unsettled. They feel the loss of control. They feel the consequence. And that feeling can make them reach back out, not to rebuild, but to restore the old comfort, to see if you still respond, to see if they still matter, to see if the door still opens with one small knock. This is where you must be honest with yourself. When they message you, what exactly are they offering? Are they offering a conversation that includes accountability? Or are they offering a breadcrumb that invites you to do the emotional work again? Are they offering consistency, or are they offering a moment? Are they offering repair, or are they offering nostalgia? Because the most painful trap is when you mistake a moment for a future. You think they reached out, so they changed. You think they said they miss me, so they're ready. You think they're being sweet today, so the pattern is over. But you need to understand, avoidant patterns don't end with sweetness. They end with sustained effort, and sustained effort is rare without real self-work. And here is the part that will require your courage. Your response is your standard. If you respond immediately, if you respond warmly, if you respond like nothing happened, you teach them that access is still free. You teach them that they can skip the hard part, the apology, the accountability, the conversation, and still get you. You teach them that a casual message is enough to reopen your heart. But if you pause, if you stay calm, if you require clarity, you teach a different lesson, not a lesson to punish them, but a lesson to protect you. You teach that your peace is not negotiable. You teach that your time is not a waiting room. You teach that love is not something they can reach for, only when they feel lonely. You need to understand, you are not being cruel when you ask for more. You are being honest. You are not being dramatic when you hold a boundary. You are being faithful to yourself. Because you know what it felt like to be the person who kept the connection alive alone. You know what it felt like to stare at a phone, to reread messages, to wonder where you stand, to accept half answers, to carry the uncertainty like a weight in your chest. And you are allowed to decide that you will never go back to that place again. So if they test the door, you don't have to slam it, but you also don't have to fling it open. You can say with your actions, not your arguments, I am not available for the old version of this. I am not available for casual access without commitment. I am not available for attention without consistency. And if they want you, truly want you, they will have to come with something real, with effort that lasts, with honesty that doesn't disappear, with courage that stays present. Because you need to understand your heart is not a place someone visits when it suits them. Your heart is a home, and homes require responsibility. You need to understand something, because if you miss this, you will keep confusing pain with proof, and you will keep reopening doors that only know how to close on your fingers. Your power is not in making them regret. Your power is not in collecting evidence that they finally feel something. Your power is in refusing to reopen a door unless they bring consistency, accountability, and real effort. Because a person can miss you and still not be capable of loving you well. A person can feel sad and still not be safe. A person can come back and still bring the same pattern with them. For a long time, you were trained by love, or what you thought was love, to accept almost as much as you gave. You were trained to believe that if you were patient enough, soft enough, understanding enough, someone would finally become consistent. You were trained to turn your needs into questions, your boundaries into negotiations, your pain into silence. You kept thinking, if I just communicate better, if I just stay calm, if I just don't ask for too much, they'll stay. But you need to understand, love doesn't require you to reduce yourself. Love doesn't ask you to beg for basic respect. Love doesn't make you feel like you're too much for wanting the bare minimum: clarity, consistency, presence, effort. So when they pull away and you finally cut them off, when you finally remove access, they may feel the sting of consequences. They may feel shocked. They may feel that delayed sadness. And in that moment, you might be tempted to think, This is my moment. This is when I prove my value. This is when I finally get the ending I deserve. But you need to understand, your value does not rise because they finally notice it. Your value was always there. What changes is your standard. What changes is your willingness to protect yourself. Because there is a difference between someone coming back because they have changed and someone coming back because they are uncomfortable without access. One comes with repair. One comes with testing. One comes with ownership. One comes with a casual message. One comes with humility. One comes with nostalgia. One says, I understand what I did and I want to do the work. The other says, hey, and hopes you'll carry the rest like you always did, and if you let your heart respond to attention instead of effort, you will keep being pulled back into the same loop: hope, closeness, distance, confusion, pain, and you will call it love because you don't want to accept the truth that it was never built to hold you. You need to understand, consistency is not a bonus. It is the foundation. Accountability is not an attitude, it is behavior. Real effort is not a burst of emotion, it is what shows up on ordinary days, when nobody is scared of losing you, when nobody is in panic, when there is no dramatic moment forcing action. That's where love is proven. Not in apologies, but in patterns, not in sweet words, but in repeated choices, not in the rush of reunion, but in the steady presence after the reunion, when life becomes normal again. And I know how hard this is, because you are not just dealing with logic. You are dealing with a heart that bonded. You are dealing with memories that feel warm. You are dealing with a nervous system that became addicted to the highs and lows. You are dealing with the way your body lights up when they return, because your brain remembers relief. It remembers the moment the silence ended. It remembers the moment you felt chosen again. But you need to understand, relief is not love. Relief is what happens when pain pauses. And if you build your life on relief, you will keep accepting relationships that hurt you just enough to make their return feel like a reward. So your power is learning to hold the line when your heart is tender. Your power is not reacting to them, but responding to yourself. Your power is being able to say, I can miss you without messaging you. I can love what we had without returning to what we became. I can forgive you without giving you access. I can wish you well without reopening the door to my peace. That is maturity. That is strength. That is the kind of self-respect that doesn't shout, it simply stops participating in the cycle. You need to understand, when you ask for consistency, you are not asking for perfection. You are asking for something basic. Show up when it matters. Communicate when it's uncomfortable. Repair when you cause harm. Don't disappear and call it space while leaving someone in anxiety. Don't keep someone half attached and call it love. And if they cannot do that, no matter how sad they feel, no matter how much they miss you, no matter how much they say they care, they are not ready for the kind of love you deserve. This is why you must stop making decisions based on their emotions in one moment. An avoidant can feel lonely and reach out. An avoidant can feel fear and return. An avoidant can feel the sting of losing access and suddenly become attentive. But if the core remains the same, if they still avoid hard conversations, if they still disappear when intimacy rises, if they still offer you uncertainty as a lifestyle, then nothing has changed. Only the temperature of their discomfort. And you cannot build your future on someone's temporary discomfort. So if they come back, you don't respond with punishment, you respond with clarity. You don't respond with a speech, you respond with a standard. You don't respond with anger, you respond with boundaries that protect you. You watch what happens next. Do they show up consistently, or do they fade again once the fear passes? Do they take ownership, or do they blame timing, stress, life, anything but themselves? Do they repair, or do they reset, pretending the past didn't happen? Because you need to understand, a reset without repair is a guarantee of repetition. And here is the heart-touching truth. You are not losing them when you hold a boundary. You are saving yourself. You are saving the version of you that used to wait, the version of you that used to overthink, the version of you that used to accept crumbs because hunger makes anything taste like hope. You are protecting your peace. You are protecting your dignity. You are protecting your future. And if that means they feel regret, that is not your goal. It is simply the consequence of mishandling someone who finally chose themselves.